All right. Hello, everyone. I am BOsintBlanc. I'm going to be talking to you today about systematic OSINT and OSINT fundamentals. Um, Before I do that, I need to talk a little bit about who the heck I am. I have a background in desktop support. I've worked in SOC and incident response, or IR. I'm a lover of all things OSINT. I'm currently employed as an intelligence analyst with team lead with the threat intelligence firm Dark Tower. You can see probably my little Dark Tower hanging over this shoulder. I had a second place finish with Dwayne the Sock Johnson. That was my team in the Trace Labs Global Search Party. And I'm the case tracking and statistics leads with NCPTF, which is National Child Protection Task Force. Fantastic organizations, both of them. I'm really lucky to be a part of them. That said, nothing in this presentation represents the views of my employers or the organizations I'm associated with, past, present, or future. For better or worse, this is all me. So you get what you get here. Thanks for taking time to tune in. I am going to be talking to you today about 7 fundamental skills. OSINT, or open source intelligence, is an amazingly broad discipline. It is a big kind of unwieldy thing to learn, and it can feel quite overwhelming, honestly, as you start to do that. And what I've always found, my background in desk support has led me to believe that all things are easier when I break them down into fundamental and adjustable parts. And I really believe that you can teach and learn anything. All right, so the seven fundamental skills that I came up with as I thought about this are curiosity, diligence, analytic and intelligence technique, networking, technique and tools, ethics, and communication. The first fundamental we're going to talk about today is curiosity. OSINT at its heart is about uncovering answers. To do it, you have to be interested in learning things. You're often going to come into contact with cultures, languages, concepts that are very familiar with you, and you're going to have to deep dive them and become at least somewhat familiar, if not sometimes an expert in them. So I say that to say, I really encourage people to chase rabbit trails. A lot of times when people start to learn OSINT, I see them kind of do this thing where they're like, oh, I went down this rabbit trail and it didn't really pan out. So I guess that was a waste of time. And what I always tell people is, hey, anytime you spent learning is time well spent. It's not a waste to learn things. And I think that people who are interested in OSINT are generally interested in learning because you have to be good at it. I had an investigation that I conducted where I noticed that the person that I was investigating was very interested in this style of espresso making. So I started to learn all about this espresso making style. And I started to watch some YouTube videos about it because it was just kind of interesting. And I was like, okay. And as I'm doing that, I start to notice, hey, there's this person who's consistently going through and commenting on all of the posts. And so as I started to do that, I started to connect that account to this person I was investigating, and I was able to actually discover another avenue of inquiry in the investigation through just being curious and being interested in things. So that's why I always encourage people to go down rabbit trails. The next fundamental is diligence. So when you've hit a wall, it's often, bear with me just one moment, my headset is going real wacky. So when you've hit the wall, you don't know where to take an investigation, it's often important that you don't give up. You have to push through when you don't know what to do. And this is what I always tell people, is to adapt and find information and think about what information you do have. Find novel pivot points. When you are stuck, you you never know if the next thing that you find will actually be the thing that kind of breaks wide open an investigation. And so that's why it's just always better to take some time away from an investigation if you're feeling stuck, and then to step forward and continue to investigate that. The third fundamental is analytic and intelligence technique. Analytic and intelligence technique is what separates good OSINT from the worst kind of OSINT. Analytic and intelligence technique is taking time to use a process to actually analyze information in an analytical way. It often is trying to turn qualitative data, that is data that doesn't involve numbers, into quantitative data, into something that we can measure and sort. So that said, I want to talk about, before I get into the nitty gritty of some of the ways that you might do analytic technique, I want to talk about the good, the bad, and the OSINT. Good OSINT is, there's a lot of great organizations who are doing good OSINT right now. Organizations like Bellingcat, Trace Labs, ILF, and NCPTF, and honestly a ton more who it would take more time than I have to talk about. And there's also bad OSINT, bad as OSINT being done right now, or in recent memory. We can see that with Reddit and the Boston bomber, and multiple people falsely accused during the US Capitol riots. Both of those situations kind of have the same problem. People took very loose information and just kind of went wild and just made an accusation like based on almost no information. So we want to try to be like the good OSINT who use the techniques that we're going to talk about, analytic and techniques, and try to avoid their biases. Technique really is key. So I want for the next investigation, and this could be actually any investigation, but I'm obviously specifically focusing on OSINT. I want you to try a simple method to add a deeper analysis to a hypothesis or a conclusion you've drawn. So what you can do, and shout out to, I think I saw this from Katie Nichols, who's a threat intelligence person with Red Canary, but she kind of talked about, you can conclude with, you can make a conclusion with high, medium, or low certainty. And you can decide, you're trying to evaluate your hypothesis. So what I added, because again, we're trying to make qualitative quantitative, right? So we're going to set what I added to this was, I'm going to set a threshold for each certainty level I might use. So for example, if I have a high certainty, I could use 5 points of verification. I would consider a point of verification something like, hey, I have fundamentally correlated this username to this person, and that one point of verification could be that I have they live in the right region. A second point of correlation could be they have the right first and last name. So points of verification are just points of certainty. Again, we're taking qualitative things and making quantitative, so you have to workshop it a little bit and figure out what works in terms of evidence. But so I could choose 5 points of verification with 0 pieces of evidence against my conclusion. For a medium certainty, I might do 5 points of verification with some evidence against my conclusion, or I could do 3 points of verification with 0 evidence. And for a low certainty, I would have either a small amount of supporting evidence or a medium amount of evidence against my conclusion. I will say there is actually a fourth option, which is 0 certainty, and that actually does need to be kind of discussed. You would not put that on conclusion probably, because if you have 0 certainty, you just need to go back to the drawing board. But I will say that there is some times where you have 0 certainty, and if you have 0 certainty, that means probably keep investigating. I want to talk about biases. Biases are, and honestly, this is a primer to biases. There are a ton of biases. Biases are basically things that affect our decision making. It's a narrow way of thinking about people, situations, decisions, and often they're caused by our brains, which like to make things easy, and often situations are more complex than we really like them to be. So I'm going to give you some examples of biases and maybe an example of what that bias might look like. So hopefully that you can think about, and if you've never done this, I highly encourage you to start examining your biases. They really will impact you as an investigator. And I mean, I think fundamentally as a person, I think it's all healthy for us as human beings to examine what biases we might have and how those are affecting our relationships and interactions. The first bias I want to talk to you about is the Dunning-Kruger effect. The Dunning-Kruger effect is that people perceive a concept or event to be simplistic because they lack knowledge on it. So for example, you might say geolocation, which is trying to place a place in the world from a picture or an image of some kind. It's pretty easy, right? You just reverse image stuff. And anybody who's done geolocation knows, wow, there's a lot more to it than that. There's a lot of verification that has to happen. There's a lot of research that has to happen. But because you don't understand the process, it might seem easy. And we can do that a lot with, especially in a professional setting, maybe concepts that we don't know, or, our coworkers are doing something and we're like, oh, that's just what they do is really easy. Marketing's really easy. And I mean, we know nothing about it. So it's good to examine how that might be affecting us. Second bias I want to talk to you about is availability bias, sometimes called the availability heuristic. This is the tendency to use information we can recall quickly when evaluating a topic. So for example, you read a news story about people who've won the lottery, and as time passes on, you begin to buy more and more lottery tickets, overestimating your chances of winning, despite the fact that there's a really large statistical probability that you're not going to win. And I mean, this one is real because we see this happening all the time, right? People buy lottery tickets every single day, and most of them do it on the thought that I might win, I could win, even though it's like far more likely that you'll be struck by lightning than you will win the lottery. There's very little chance that this is going to happen, but people do it all the time. So this bias is really in play a lot. The last bias is fundamental attribution error. This is the tendency to attribute someone's behavior to existing and unfounded stereotypes while attributing our own behavior to external factors. So this is like, for example, you get cut off on the highway and you yell, "What a maniac." That's the PC version. And attributing the action to poor character on the person who cuts you off part, when it's possible they have a very good reason to be in a hurry. And then, maybe you're in a hurry and you cut somebody off and you just think, well, I had things to do. I had somewhere to be. It's okay that I cut them off. We often don't know people's stories. That's what I'll say on this one. We don't know what's going on in people's lives. And I think it's really healthy to take a step back and really try to figure out, especially, I use in a leadership position, I always try to take a step back if somebody is doing something I don't understand, and try to understand and try to get with them and ask them, hey, what's going on? What were you thinking when you did that thing? Because people will surprise you. And in making an investigative decisions, this can cause us to misunderstand people's behavior and why they might be doing something. The fourth fundamental is community and networking. I will say that for InfoSec at large, and not just OSINT, I think that networking is a requirement. It's not just a good idea. That may be really scary to some of you, and that's okay. I'm by nature a people person. I really like connecting to people, and it's okay if that doesn't feel good to you. I will say we all have to challenge ourselves to do it, and not just for professional opportunities, is what I'll say. I had a situation during an investigation where I was looking at this person whose first name was Chayo. and I was talking and just couldn't really find anything about them. I had a friend who, obviously grew up not in America, and they said, "Hey, did you know that Chayo is short for Rosario? That's a nickname." And I was like, "Oh." No, I didn't know that. And that saved me possibly hours of investigative work, but also maybe something I would have never figured out because I just didn't have a cultural context for that. And their cultural context was like brought so much insight into that situation. And that's what I'll say for you as you do investigations. Networking will bring down avenues of insight and avenues of investigation that you would have never thought of. Diversity brings insight into decision making and investigations. And I'll say you need diversity to solve complex problems. You need diversity of experience, expertise, knowledge, and culture. And networking isn't just about getting a new job. It's about, like I said, finding those holes in your knowledge. Where I've been most successful has been joining a volunteer cause I'm very passionate about with NCPTF. And by being active and engaging the OSINT and InfoSec Twitter communities, I've not only learned things, I've not only been able to, I think, advance my career through things that I've learned, but I've been able to make really good friends. People who I consider close friends and who have bettered me as a human. So I think it's really, really important. The fifth fundamental is tools and techniques. My teammate from Dwayne the Suck Johnson, Jake Krebs, he says, remember, OSINT doesn't equal tools. Tools help you plan and collect data, but the end of the result of the tool is not OSINT. You have to analyze, receive feedback, refine, produce a final actionable product of value before you can call it intelligence. I think that is very wise words. We use a lot of tools in OSINT. They make our jobs easier. They make it quicker. But being overly reliant on a tool is actually a problem. You have to, and I would say you should know how to do all the things that a tool does for you manually, or when that tool breaks, and it inevitably will, you will not know what to do, and you're going to be kind of in a pickle. So I do think that OSINT tools come often, and they often come as quickly as they go. And so because of that, one key to mastering OSINT is learning how to master a tool quickly. There are 3 questions that I ask when I'm learning a tool. I ask, what's the goal? I.e., what does the tool do? What's the method? How does it do what it does? And then, do I need an expert to learn from? This is really true, even for something as simple as Google Advanced Search Operators or Google Dorks. You need to understand how Google indexes content. You need to understand why it pulls what it pulls. And you need to understand that there's actually, and you may or may not know this, there's actually an algorithm who's putting information to the top, trying to guess what you want. And sometimes when you're doing dorks, you're actually fighting the algorithm to get the content that it doesn't think you want. So understanding that will help you structure searches better. So that's just an example. There's a lot of ins and outs to tools. The 6th fundamental is ethics and verification. I put one bullet point here, very large. Don't do crimes. Don't do illegal things. All of this stuff. And I would say don't do OSINT for good. That is my passion, is that, hey, these tools that we have, all of this information that we have, I want to use it for positive things that are putting good stuff into the world. That said, don't do illegal things. We can break ethics down into slightly bigger points. There's 3 questions that I ask with ethics. Is it legal? I.e., does it follow all national, state, and local ordinances? That's the legal aspect. Am I doing a crime by doing this? Is it approved? I.e., does it follow my organizational policies and code of conduct? I consider when I sign up to do a job, I've agreed to do the things that they're asking me to do. It means I'm going to follow the policies. And if they have a code of conduct or if they have a methodology they want to use that is differing from my own, I'm the one who needs to change, not them. And there's always conversations that could be had about policy, Is it moral is the last question, i.e. does it follow my personal internal compass or values of what is right and wrong? We have to wrestle with our personal morality and our personal value system in the context of doing this work. A really good example of all of this is just the idea at large of amongst the internet, the idea of doxing is pretty negative. However, most of what we do in OSINT would be considered doxing, right? We're doxing people or figuring out the internal details of their life, but really the context is different. If I am chasing somebody who is trafficking CSAM, that's child sexual material, I feel I don't have any moral problem with doxing that person because they have broken moral code, in my opinion, and are doing something that's very heinous. So I think that changes the equation of the context of what I'm doing in terms of what the person I'm investigating is doing. You may disagree with that, and that's okay. If you do, it's just something to think about, and you have to think about, ultimately, do I have organizational alignment with the organizations I'm in, with my value system? And if you don't, that actually is I think that's a pretty major problem. You need to have organizational alignment with your morality. My opinion. Fundamental 7, communication. Information not conveyed in a comprehensible way is meaningless. If I give you a presentation and you don't understand anything of what I'm talking about, I failed as a presenter. Whoopsie. How I communicate does depend on my audience. For example, if I'm talking to a C-suite, I'm going to talk about things like, that's a corporate suite, so that's like executives. I come from corporate world, so that's valuable to me. If I talk to a C-suite, I'll talk about cost, return on investment. I'll give a high level overview. They do not want the technical details most of the time. If I'm talking to my marketing team, I'm going to talk about brand and reputation. Those are the things, that's their language. That's what makes sense to them. If I'm talking to a technical team, I'm going to talk about scope, evidence, technical details. They don't want, I can nerd out with them, right? I can talk about those things. And so you have to match what you're saying to the situation. And that is a lot of times where we get into problems where somebody isn't understanding us. It's often because we have chosen the wrong format to convey what we're conveying. I want to put it all together now. So this is an actual investigation that I did. I've obviously removed a lot of the details as to not dox anyone. At the beginning of the investigation, and you'll see that in the blue cloud, my goal: identify the controller of an anonymous account. So that's the beginning of our investigation, and that's my ethics piece. Is that an ethical decision? Is that an ethical thing to do? I used curiosity. I discovered the city, state, first name. I discovered their likely occupation. And then I hit diligence because I just stalled out for a while there. I had that for a while and I was like, I know their first name and city they live in, but there's a million, I'm going to call them Karen. There's a million Karens in the city. What do I go? Where do I go from here? I continued to investigate their accounts and I found that they posted a picture of their Wi-Fi network. That actually was amazing. They were it was sort of like a, hey, haha, look at my Wi-Fi network name. And I was like, amazing, thank you for doing that, because I had done Sector 035's OSINT quiz. And in his OSINT quiz, he talks about a great website called Weigel.net. Weigel.net is a war driving website where people actually have collected a bunch of data of Wi-Fi network names and where they are in the world. So I was able to take that Wi-Fi network name, place it on a specific street in that city. With that, I took a little bit of an intuitive leap. I used a tool, I used Google Maps to find the nearest location of where someone of their occupation was likely to work at. And then I went back to curiosity piece. I started investigating that website of this organization, and I found a staff list with a biography that matched their first name, and all the other identifying information. Amazing, right? Like I got, this is it. I was like, this is the piece. However, I used my analytic and intelligence technique. I'm pretty sure this is it, right? My heart's like, yes, let's go. But I confirmed that all the information that I found had matched, that there was no points of, there was no evidence against it. I communicated my evidence to my team, and my team reviewed and analyzed the evidence, and they confirmed my working theory. We used a process to actually make sure this is the right person. At the end of it, I got to communicate that information. I generated a report, and after a short time, I solicited feedback on that report to make sure, hey, did you get what you wanted out of this? Was this what you were hoping to find out? And with that, that ended the investigation. So I'll say with all of this, we can see that how each of these pieces touches the investigation. I am running short on time. Thank you so much for listening to me. I made it just under the time limit. So I am on Twitter as @BOsintBlanc. You can email me at osinthomes@protonmail, and I'm on Discord for under BOsintBlanc as well. If you have any questions, please hit me up. Thank you for your time.
Wow, that was awesome. Loving your energy. Managed to really do a lot of stuff. So we have two questions. One is from me. It's a little bit of a joke question, but you understand why. So I'm speaking of attribution errors, yeah. So
Yes.
I'm going from the stereotype. Well, not the stereotype. The fact that I know that you are good at OSINT. You do a lot of OSINT stuff. I mean, it is in your handle, right?
Yeah.
How many monitors do you have?
I have 3 monitors.
Yep.
I gotta have, I mean, I think that's a necessity, to be honest. I've told, when I have to work off just my laptop screen, I'm like, I literally don't know how to do it. I don't know how I work off just a laptop screen.
I have 5 screens here, so I understand it entirely.
Yeah. And second question, what's your favorite part about OSINT? Oh.
Can you repeat the question?
Yep. What's your favorite part about OSINT? Oh, am I not?
Hang on,
Is my mic not working? Okay.
Can I hear?
More technical difficulties, I think.
I'm having audio issues. I apologize. Everything was working and then it just stopped.
Right. Well, I think we've hit time. So unless this kind of gets resolved.
If you want to just type, I can, as long as you can hear me, if you want to type it in the chat, I can always answer from the chat. How do you know when it's time to stop a line of investigation? I think for me, when it's time to stop a line of investigation, is when I usually set a hard limit. Honestly, I set I'll return to an investigation usually about 3 times, with some time between it. So if I have returned on the 3rd time and I'm still really not finding anything, I'll usually hit up somebody else, have them look over what I've discovered and see, do you see any other ways of going about this investigation? And if we come to the conclusion together that there's really nothing to do, that's kind of when I stop.
Awesome. Let's see if you pick up on the last question.
My favorite part of OSINT, I love the puzzle of it. That's what I love. I love piecing together, in the investigation that I shared, when I made the jump from Wi-Fi network to street to, hey, I think that they might work here. I literally will a lot of times I'll be like, yes, I'll actually cheer out loud. I'll be like, got him. I love that because it's there's something about it that is so satisfying to me, that piece of making the connection of all this kind of seemingly confusing or maybe seems like disparate information to an answer. I love that.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was fantastic. You had beautiful energy throughout the entire talk.